For the next thing, we're gonna look at different angles when we're talking about 3D structures. So this is where Illustrator can kind of give you a little basis using some of these 3D tools that are pretty standard. I'm going to just go off of this kind of structure, this kind of angle, I should say. You need to create like half of these shapes to use the 3D revolve tools with. So I'm just gonna, let's say like half of this cap will be something like that, and then I'll just create the base. It's not gonna be perfect, but just you get an idea of what it's kind of gonna look like. I'm gonna select just the left side of everything because I want to just give it a little round edge to it, again, so it's kind of has like this round edge. And I'm not going to do this like inner shape in here, but just so you can kind of get a little idea. But this is basically like half of a shape like this, right? It's not perfect, but that kind of shape, that kind of structure. And I'm just going to turn everything gray for now. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to group it for now, Command G. So, where previously I had two paths, I'm going to have a group now. And I'm going to go to my effects and 3D, and revolve is what I want here. And now automatically it gives me this weird, revolve because it's revolving from the left edge. I think that's default, but because I want to revolve it from this edge, I'm just going to click right edge, and then you can see I have something similar to that. Obviously, like my cap is smaller, but you get the point. And then, I could kind of drag this thing and, get like maybe a similar angle. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then perspective is what's going to give it that like kind of warped, distorted view. Once I have that perspective up, I can, mess around with it again a little bit more. And hit OK. And again, it's not perfect, but you get the idea here. And what I want to do is, so when this is a group, and this is kind of like a workaround, you kind of got to cheat these things when it's Photoshop and Illustrator versus 3D software. But if I just, let's say I deleted this bottom portion, you're going to see the effects I have on here is going to make this look different because it's not warping the whole thing. It's only warping this one piece now. So watch when I delete it. Again, it changes the view and the perspective of that cap. So what I do is I do a little trick to kind of cheat these things, and I will drag a copy of it, and I'm gonna just select like this bottom portion here, and I'm gonna go to opacity and just make that 0. And then I'm gonna select this top portion here, go to that opacity and make it 0. And now all this is really doing is keeping the perspective of these things as it was, and actually make a third copy here. I'm going to put that back to 100 because the reason why I'm doing this is when I copy it to Photoshop, I want to be able to have these things as separate pieces, right? So first things first, I'll just copy this whole thing to Photoshop, Command C, and I'll go with a new artboard that is, let's say 6 by 6 to 150, create, and Command V, Smart Object. So I have these pieces in here, and if I want to make this darker, I can, but I think this gives a good idea of the shape. So I'm going to take this now, Command C and Command V, Smart Object. can try to line that up perfectly if I want to. For now, it's not a big deal. And then I will go take this piece. Again, it's a group with that thing hidden. And I will paste it in here. Same thing, smart object. And I'm going to hide the bottom one, so now I have this top piece and this bottom piece, right? You know, this first one was just kind of a reference to line them up a little bit. But yeah, now I have my basis for a structure here, and you know, I could have changed the color, you know, but what I could also do is just embed some stuff and multiply color on top of it. I can use, you know, I'm gonna actually change this to be CMYK. Don't flatten, don't rasterize. You know, if I want, I can take my, you know, my channel mixer, embed that, and let's see what we're working with here. All black, but let's say I want to make this, you know, kind of magenta. I know I have that black slider to work with. I'll make the cap a different color here. I'll, you know, similar color, just maybe darker. Embed that first. The black, and just pump that up a little bit. But you know, then you have your basic shapes that you can start working with here, and it's just like the other stuff we were doing, where you're just kind of adding more and more highlights. And I'll just pull this reference back into view here while I work on this. You know, I can, again, same thing with the selections. If I make a selection of this, and you know, say I fill this with white, pull that opacity down, make a selection of it again, and I can, you know, while I'm in one of the selection tools, I can use the arrow keys to move it around, delete, you know, can bring my eraser tool in or that kind of thing, and you know, give it some of these like details here. If I want, I can embed this, and you know, maybe I can blur it if I want. So I do a Gaussian blur, you know, then it starts becoming softer, like maybe something like that. You know, I can kind of just add whatever I want here. Let's say I want a little shadow around here. I'm going to use this shape, and I'm going to create a layer behind it, fill it with black, and I'll blur that. You know, again, this is kind of just creating some shapes. I will use like a linear burn blend mode on it. Let's say maybe I'll even make this a little bit bigger, and then I could either just erase it, but I'm going to mask and just use a soft. I'll do 100% opacity. Quick key 0. And you know, I got this. I can pull this back, obviously, the opacity on this, but you start to get the idea. This cap has like this nice highlight here. I can, you know, again, embed another layer here. Just use a soft white brush, maybe at like a 30% opacity. do that kind of highlight. Back. I'll go back down to this base portion now. I'm going to do the same thing. Add that highlight there, kind of mimicking that. I can get close to the edge there if I want. Pull the opacity back. So again, it's really just like going in and adding all these details now. And if you want to kind of shape it out, I can create another, this like ellipse shape here for the top and start piecing in other things here. So let's say I'll just make a elliptical selection here. I'm just gonna create a new layer above everything here. And if I go to select, transform selection, I can start, trying to match this kind of top shape. Again, doesn't have to be perfect, but once I do that, then I can start adding like these kind of highlights if I want. So I'm just going to fill this with black now, just because this is going to be like a kind of a reference shape for me to use. I'll hide it. But let's say I do that again, create a new, new shape up here, fill it with white, and then I'm just going to go back to my arrow keys and kind of move this around a little bit. And I can transform this selection again, always, if I want. If I want to make it a little bit bigger. But yeah, I just trying to create this little sliver edge over here. And I can embed that into the shape too, pull the opacity back, slightly blur that if I want to, filter blur. There's no kind of end in what you can do with all these effects and lights and shapes. And just maybe add a little bit to the base. Do kind of the same thing that I did with the highlight at the top, but this time I'm gonna do it with a darker shape. Select that. Just using my arrow keys. Oops, sorry. I gotta be in one of these selection tools for the arrow keys to work like that. Again, I can always select, transform selection if I want to make it a little bit bigger. So it kind of goes past the edges here. So all I really want is this base. I'm going to hit delete. And I have that little base shadow there. I can pull back on it. That just gives a little dimension. In this particular instance, if I wanted to create another one, I can use like the brush tool to just, I'll embed that too, but just give it a little, dimension on these edges here. Go with these blending modes here. But, again, depending on the color that you're choosing or, how deep you want some of these things to be, that shadow's looking a little heavy. Maybe I'll pull back on that a little. Some of these light effects are kind of heavy. Might pull back on that a little, so it's kind of all the detailing you want to put in. It's up to you. And you can kind of figure out how to get the shapes and the, all the little edge details and lighting, how you want it. And really this is just like a solid kind of shape, but if you're talking about glass, obviously there'd be a lot more detailing and a lot more of these kind of edge, like little intricacies and stuff to it. But, I think you kind of get the idea, but this is just a way to kind of, cheat the structure in Illustrator to get like the angle that you want, and then just start layering and layering in Photoshop to kind of get all the little details and effects you want on it. So I'm just going to stop here because I think you get the gist. You can keep on adding as much as you want.